September 1939. Poland is invaded from the west by Nazi Germany and from the east by the Soviet Union. In a matter of days, the country finds itself caught between two of the most powerful military machines in Europe, its fate sealed by forces far beyond its control. The German blitzkrieg, a new and terrifying form of warfare, crushes Polish resistance with shocking speed. Tanks, aircraft and mechanized infantry sweep across the countryside, overwhelming defenders and leaving devastation in their wake. Polish soldiers fight bravely, but they are outmatched and outgunned, forced to retreat as their lines collapse. Britain and France, bound by treaty, declare war on Germany after issuing an ultimatum. Crowds gather in London and Paris, anxiously awaiting news, hoping for decisive action. But when the Soviets invade from the east, there's only silence from the Western Allies. The world watches, confused and alarmed by this selective response. Why did the Allies act against Germany but not the USSR? The answer lies in a tangle of strategy, legal language and harsh military reality. Allied leaders debate their options behind closed doors, weighing the risks of opening a second front against the Soviets while already facing the might of Hitler's armies. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, signed in secret, divided Poland between Hitler and Stalin before a single shot was fired. This cynical agreement sealed Poland's fate, ensuring that its people would be caught in the crossfire of two totalitarian regimes. Britain and France faced a dilemma. Their treaties were written with Germany in mind, not the Soviets. The legal language was ambiguous, and the political will to confront both dictatorships at once simply wasn't there. The Allies hesitated, unsure how to respond to this new and unexpected threat. The world watched as Poland was carved up, but the Allies hesitated, trapped by circumstance and calculation. International outrage grew, but practical options were few. The League of Nations proved powerless, and diplomatic protests fell on deaf ears. Their inaction wasn't simple betrayal. It was a desperate, pragmatic choice in a moment of crisis. Leaders weighed the survival of their own nations against the fate of Poland, making decisions that would echo through history. The decision would haunt Allied leaders and shape the course of World War II. In the years to come, many would look back with regret, questioning whether more could have been done to save Poland from destruction. Poland's agony became a symbol of the limits of Allied power and the brutal logic of geopolitics. The suffering of its people, the destruction of its cities, and the loss of its independence would serve as a grim warning to the world. The question remains, could the Allies have done more, or was this the only path left open to them? History offers no easy answers, but the tragedy of Poland in 1939 continues to haunt the conscience of the world. For Britain and France, Hitler's Germany wasn't just a threat, it was the clear and present danger looming over Europe. The Nazi regime's aggressive rhetoric and rapid military build-up sent shockwaves through the continent, making it impossible for the Allies to ignore the growing menace at their doorstep. Years of unchecked aggression, rearmament in defiance of treaties, the bold march into the Rhineland, the annexation of Austria and the occupation of Czechoslovakia proved that Hitler's ambitions were not just grand, but seemingly limitless. Each move shattered the fragile peace and made it clear that appeasement would only embolden him further. Nazi ideology didn't just threaten one nation, it cast a shadow over all of Europe. Germany's military machine was the most powerful and advanced on the continent, capable of swift, devastating action. The fear was real. If not stopped, Hitler could dominate the entire region. The Soviet Union, while deeply distrusted in the West, was seen as a secondary threat at this stage. Ruthless, yes, but primarily focused on its own survival and internal security. Stalin's regime was brutal, but its ambitions seemed more contained, at least for the moment. Stalin's motives appeared defensive, not expansionist on the scale of Hitler's Germany. The Soviets were building walls, not tearing them down across Europe. The Allies understood a hard truth. They could only fight one major enemy at a time. Their resources, manpower, and industrial capacity were limited, and a two-front war would stretch them dangerously thin. Opening a second front against the USSR while battling Nazi Germany would have been strategic suicide, an impossible gamble that could doom Europe to totalitarian rule. Every plan, every resource, every ounce of Allied effort was focused on one goal: defeating Germany first. Factories ran day and night, soldiers trained relentlessly, and supply lines stretched across continents to support the fight. Stalin was an opportunist, always watching for his moment, but Hitler was the true architect of war, the mastermind behind the chaos engulfing Europe. In the end, the Allies made a fateful choice: to confront the immediate threat, the tiger at their throat, rather than chase the wolf lurking in the distance. Their survival depended on it. The Anglo-Polish Agreement, signed in August 1939, was crafted with meticulous precision. Its secret clauses specifically named Germany as the intended target of any mutual defense. This was not just a formality, it was a calculated move, reflecting the anxieties and priorities of the time. The language was deliberate, leaving little ambiguity about whom the Allies were preparing to confront. But when the Soviets invaded Poland from the east just weeks later, Britain and France argued that their obligations under the agreement didn't apply. The world watched as legal interpretations became shields for inaction. The guarantee, they insisted, was meant solely to deter German aggression, not to address Soviet opportunism. This distinction, though technical, had enormous consequences for the fate of Poland. This legal loophole provided the Allies with a way to avoid being drawn into a two-front war, a conflict they knew they couldn't possibly win at that moment. It was a calculated risk, balancing moral responsibility with military reality. France's own treaty with Poland mirrored this focus, emphasizing Germany as the primary threat, not the Soviet Union. The wording was no accident, it was a product of strategic necessity. Their entire military strategy, from troop deployments to defensive lines, was built around the expectation of a German attack from the west. Projecting power eastward into the vastness of Poland or confronting the Red Army was never part of their immediate plans. For the Allies, interpreting their promises in the narrowest possible way became a tool of survival, a way to buy time and preserve their own nations in the face of overwhelming odds. To the Poles, this felt like a profound betrayal. Their hopes for rescue were dashed as London and Paris chose caution over commitment. But for the leaders in those capitals, it was a grim necessity, forced by the harsh realities of war. The legal fine print in these treaties allowed Britain and France to focus their limited resources on the main threat, Nazi Germany, even as Poland was overrun and its people scattered. It was a painful, pragmatic use of diplomatic language, forged in a time of chaos and uncertainty. Every word in those agreements carried the weight of life and death decisions. Sometimes survival means clinging to the letter of the law, not its spirit. In the fog of war, the devil truly is in the diplomatic detail. Even if the Allies had wanted to fight the Soviets, geography made it impossible. There was no direct front, no way to reach Soviet forces in Poland. The Baltic was blocked, the RAF couldn't reach, and the Royal Navy was powerless on land. French forces were built for defense, not distant offensives. Any attack on the USSR would have been a hollow gesture. No real way to strike, only more enemies. Declaring war on Moscow would have pleased Hitler, not helped Poland. The Allies had to fight the enemy they could reach, Nazi Germany. The phony war revealed Allied unpreparedness. Britain and France needed time to mobilize, rearm, and build defenses. Launching an offensive, even against Germany, was out of the question, let alone fighting the Soviets too. France clung to the Maginot Line, haunted by World War I losses. Adding the USSR as an enemy would have shattered fragile Allied strategy and morale. The Allies focused on building strength, not expanding the war. Declaring war on the Soviets would have been an empty threat, exposing Allied weakness. Their only option: prepare for the inevitable clash with Germany. Allied leaders hoped the Nazi-Soviet pact was temporary, a marriage of convenience doomed to fail. Declaring war on the USSR would have cemented the Hitler-Stalin alliance, giving Germany access to vital Soviet resources. By holding back, the Allies kept diplomatic channels open, hoping to split their enemies later. The Soviet Union, though brutal, might one day be an asset against Hitler. War is fought with alliances as much as armies. The Allies gambled that time and tension would break the Nazi-Soviet pact. It was a risky, pragmatic choice, one that kept options open for the future. Sometimes patience is the only weapon left. The trauma of World War I haunted Britain and France. Public opinion was deeply anti-war. Leaders knew their people would not support another massive conflict unless absolutely necessary. War with Germany was accepted as unavoidable. War with the USSR was not. Explaining a second war to exhausted, grieving nations would have been political suicide. Leaders needed to preserve unity and morale for the long fight ahead. Adding the Soviets as an enemy risked fracturing the home front. The memory of 1918 was a constant warning. Public consent was precious and finite. The Allies chose to fight the war they had to, not the one they couldn't win.